Very special show. Hope you're doing well. Good day. How the heck are you? As we get towards Father's Day, we've got round one of the U.S. Open still going on. I'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. But Father's Day weekend, so very special. And for one individual that we're going to talk about, a Father's Day he didn't know that he would be able to really be around for uh, a short period of time ago. It is an amazing, amazing story. And I've talked about my friendship with Scott Pollard. I've talked about being with Scott and knowing Scott for 25 years now and being in the intensive care unit room hours after his heart surgery. And I have followed this process very closely. And I thought today would be a phenomenal time to talk about the E60 documentary that's going to be debuting on Sunday, Father's Day, Heart of Pearl. It is an incredible documentary. I saw it a couple of days ago. And trust me when I tell you this, you are going to be blown away at how good this documentary is. We now bring in the director of Heart of Pearl, Dan Lindberg. Dan, it's so great to have you on. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you, Grant. I really appreciate you having me on and for the kind words.
How did you get connected with Scott? How did this all come about?
So, Scott was in. You probably knew Scott was in heart failure for a while,
Oh,
but
yes.
casual fans didn't. Most people didn't, and he was keeping it private. And then he, as he says, some people were accusing him of kind of faking this. So he started posting some things cryptically on social media just to kind of get it out there a little bit. We, as E60, we saw the posts, and I reached out to his wife was amplifying, and I reached out to Dawn. I just sent her an email and said, "Hey, my name is Dan Lindberg. I work for E60. I see your husband is in heart failure. Would you be interested in documenting whatever happens?" And at first, they were kind of like, I don't know. But we got on a Zoom call, and I just kind of explained to him who I was. I sent him some things that I had done in the past, and they came back and they said, "Let's do it."
Is this a story about becoming an organ donor? Is it a father son angle? I mean, it's E60. You could have probably done a 10-part series on this. I mean, how challenging was that to decide, okay, what angle are we going to take? We got to stick to it. But the message at the end of the day is really become an organ donor and save someone's life, correct?
That is absolutely correct. And when we started this film, we were doing a story on a former NBA player who was in heart failure, and we didn't know where it was going to go. And when Scott went to Vanderbilt on February 6th, he invited us along. And the goal of that shoot was just to get some general footage, just start documenting things, general B-roll that we could use anywhere throughout the film. When we had talked to him, he said, hopefully I can get a heart in the next couple of months. We didn't know if that was going to be in calendar year 2025, whatever. We
Correct.
show up at Vanderbilt, and it's just me with a camera, and we go in, and 5 minutes into this first appointment, the doctors are examining him, and I had met Scott in person literally 5 minutes ago in the hallway, and we go inside, and I'm thinking to myself, this is not going well. This is not going well at all. And then the doctor looks at him. He says, we cannot let you go home. You are so sick. And from that moment on, it was just like a race against time. And it turned our world upside down, but not even a fraction of a percentage of what it did to their lives. So from that moment on, the next 10 days, we had no idea what was going to happen. And not just from a story standpoint, but just from Scott's life. We had no idea. So the more it happened, the more we came to learn about Scott's father. And this was a condition that his father also had. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And his dad was a really good basketball player. Well, that's also interesting. And then Scott was 16 when he lost his dad. That's interesting. Scott, how old is your oldest son? Oh, 16. The parallels were just staggering. So it started out as just a heart transplant story, but the story that we ended up telling was about a 16-year-old kid named Scott who lives in San Diego, California, who lost his father to a heart attack. and a condition that he would ultimately inherit, and would get the transplant that his father couldn't get, and allow him to be at his son's senior day. And Scott had 3 senior days: one at Kansas, one at Torrey Pines, and one at Kamiakin. Well, two actually, I guess or the volleyball was at Torrey Pines, but his dad wasn't there for any of them. And due to this technology and this life-saving procedure, he was able to be at his son Ozzy's senior day this last October, and that was going to be the end of the film. And then something else crazy happened, which we can get into later. But so that's the story that we were looking to tell, and it just kind of evolved. And we owed it to Scott and Dawn and their family to put everything we had into this.
I will just give everyone a little tip. When you watch this on Sunday or whenever you watch it, have some tissue nearby, because the last couple of moments of this documentary are powerful with a capital P. And I literally got done watching the documentary with tears streaming down my face. And I was saying out loud, not to myself, I was this, wow, wow, wow. It's a wow moment. It's a wow moment.
And it's very kind of you to say that. That was one of the other things, and I won't spoil it for your
Right.
audience. That was one of the other things that just kind of happened. And and that's what we have to do as filmmakers. We have to be nimble. And the worst thing I could do as a director is walk into this and be like, this is a story I'm looking to tell, and that's it. We just got to be nimble. And we realized what was happening. We realized the story, and ultimately it's a father and son story. I was elated when it came out on Father's Day, or when we were going to debut it on Father's Day.
Yep.
There were conversations, oh, maybe we do it during Kansas basketball season, let's air it after a Kansas game. I mean, we had all those discussions. And I always wanted it to be on Father's Day, because I just think that's the main takeaway for me, is I just think it's a perfect story to watch next to your dad or next to your son, for so many reasons.
Another powerful part of this documentary, and I lived it the morning after Scott received his heart, when I was with him and Dawn. And it's hard to really put into words, and I speak for a living, but it's hard to come up with the words adequately enough to describe the emotions of that morning, knowing that you have just received a gift of life, and you don't know if your heart is going to work for you. You don't know if your body's going to accept it. So there's all of that going on. But I remember that morning, Friday, asking Scott if he could tell the difference. And he said, yes, already he could tell the difference. This was hours after heart surgery on all kinds of medication. But the three of us were praying for an individual that they did not know, the John Doe at that point, who became Casey Angel. And I can't even begin to explain to you what the emotions are, looking at Scott and Dawn holding his hand and us talking. But we're also, the three of us, talking about an individual that's no longer alive, that's given Scott a new lease on life. Powerful doesn't even describe that.
You're absolutely right. And I was there that morning. We filmed. We were fortunate enough to be with Scott the morning of the transplant. We followed him into the operating room. We had a camera in the transplant, in the procedure,
Which was amazing, by the way. Amazing.
It was, and I got to give credit to Scott, Dawn, and Vanderbilt for that. None of that happens without all three of them signing off on it. And then, we followed the heart. The heart arrived. We followed it up with our camera, and we take it all the way until it actually goes inside. It's not the just so everybody's aware, it's not the gory, bloody mess that
Right.
that everybody would be expecting. It's real, but we tried to take great care and great grace with it, with the scene like that. It's a privilege to be able to be there. But yeah, we spoke to Scott, I want to say 11 hours after his 18. I don't remember when we first got to talk to him, But I asked him how he was doing, and he said the breathing tube had just come out, and he said, I can feel a difference already. The phrase he used to say was squirrels fighting. He used to feel like there were squirrels fighting in his chest.
Right.
His heart just wasn't doing anything that it was supposed to. And he said he immediately felt better. And that was an eye-opening moment for me. But the survivor's guilt is real. The processing is something that you don't get over quickly. And I'm just speaking that from work. I mean, I don't. He can tell me all about it. I still don't know what it's like. I just know what he's told me. But he is the things he's doing now, and the role model he is for organ donation and transplantation
Yeah.
is very, very admirable. And the family of the the recipient of his heart, should be very proud of him, and I believe they are.
I would imagine when you start a project like this and you start a documentary, you don't really know what the end result is going to be. And you don't even know what the impact is going to be on your viewers, let alone yourself. But for you, after experiencing this and putting this documentary together, what's the one thing that you take away from this?
The power of the human spirit. I know that sounds cliche and corny, but what I mean by that is, so many people's lives are connected in ways that we have no idea and will never, ever, ever realize. And, some child loses his father tragically in, a town in Texas, and he doesn't know what he's going to do with his life. And now he has a former NBA player who started a scholarship for him, who's going to try to send him to college, who's just going to dedicate what he has in the rest of his life to trying to make that boy's life special. And these are two lives that just otherwise never, ever, ever would have been intertwined. And it's just so cool, Grant, to just see it play out and just see it all come together. And, the grace that, that family has shown, and just the grace that Scott and Dawn and their family has shown them. It was really, really, really cool to watch. And, Scott told me, he goes, listen, Dan, I have another son now. I have
Yeah,
another son now, and his
that's
name
right.
is William. And he knows, and it not just lip service. He knows what it's like to lose a father. He knows what it's like to be a teenage boy and lose his father. So he has that ability to communicate all of that stuff. And his mom says, we're excited that, that William has a father figure to look up to. And that's not something that Scott's like, yeah, whatever. Like, Scott takes that really serious. And that's just really impressive to me.
And watching the documentary, the one thing that was also very apparent is the profound impact that his college coach at Kansas, Roy Williams, had on Scott.
Yes. In this line of work, we make interview requests all the time. And we always like to say an answer of no is always better than no answer. If you're not interested, just let me know. We'll try to pivot. And when you're trying to make requests for retired Hall of Fame college basketball coaches, you don't always get prompt responses. You don't always get immediate responses or positive responses. That yes came so quick when he found out we wanted to do a story on Scott. And it was like, okay, great. And he said, come to my house. We'll do it right here. I'll give you as much time as you need. And those are the little moments that, like, as a director, producer, you're like, all right, Scott is worth all this time and all this effort that we're going to put into it.
Yes.
And, Roy calls Scott the smartest player he's ever coached in the film. And, if you didn't know anything other than Scott, other than what you've seen of him, you might not believe that.
Right. Right.
If you just know the ponytails and the mohawks and the Fu Manchu,
yes, I know.
You otherwise might not believe that. But I was so impressed, because the other thing that's interesting about Scott is he's produced some movies. He's been in some movies.
Yes.
He was on Survivor.
Yes.
This guy knows TV. He knows cameras. He knows lighting. He knows how this stuff is supposed to go. Like, there was going to be, this isn't the way I work, but there was going to be no pulling any fast ones on Scott whatsoever throughout this process. And he just asked very smart, very intelligent questions. But to go back to your question, Roy loved him, still loves him. Roy
Yeah.
was in town at the Pacer game last night. Roy said, I want to come to this Pacers game, flew in early, went over to Scott's house just to say hi to him.
Love it.
And so they were hanging out literally last night. And
Love it.
what Scott says in the film is he needed a father figure once his dad passed away.
Yep.
And he knew that was going to be Roy because he had committed to Lute Olson verbally and Arizona. But, then he met Roy and things just changed. And Scott and his sister and, his mom, it just was a match made in heaven. So those two, if I could have been a fly on the wall for some of those Kansas basketball practices back in the mid 90s, that would have been something.
And Dan, Heart of Pearl will debut Sunday, right? Father's Day?
It debuts Sunday, 1:00 Eastern on ESPN, and then immediately after, it'll be available on ESPN Plus. An extended version will be available on ESPN Plus. It's not too terribly much longer, but there's some extra cool stuff in there, including the aforementioned Roy Williams senior day moment, which from Kansas, which I thought was awesome, and just a couple other little things. But like I said, great father-son story, and on a family and a gentleman worth telling a story about.
And a superwoman in Dawn. I mean,
Yes.
I can't even begin. Scott would not be here without Dawn. I'll just put it to you that way.
Yep.
I'm just telling you, he wouldn't have made it. There's just not a chance.
Yep. And he said that. I mean, he said that in his interview. He said that to me off camera. He said that to me on camera. And they just have this connection that comes through, I think, on film. And my favorite scene, Grant, in the whole documentary isn't it's not the surgery per se. It's the hospital room once they get confirmation that surgery is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And the tension is palpable, but
Mm-hmm.
Scott and Dawn are hand in hand, and you can just tell that they're there for each other. And it's just my favorite scene because it's so real, it's so raw, but it's also just beautiful in its own mysterious way. And then Scott goes into the operating room, and Dawn is standing in the hallway by herself, and she has no idea what's going to happen next. Nobody does. And those were conversations, Grant, that we had as a production team going into this shoot. I mean, I had to ask a very serious, legit question. Say, guys, what if? So those were discussions that we were having. And luckily our fingers were crossed, and, that scenario never played out. Thank God.
And that goes on so often in that hospital and around the world. What I learned in my short period of time being at Vanderbilt and being around the nurses, and then the cardiologist walked in after Scott had gotten up and walked to the chair and sat down. And one thing I've learned about Scott and being around him during his NBA days, Scott would run through a wall, and that's how he played. And if Scott could play, if he could walk, he would play. And I was there when the cardiologist came in and gave him a breathing apparatus and said, I want you to breathe into this and exhale and whatever. And the cardiologist was blown away. He was like, I'm just letting you know that what you have just done, we normally don't see for 2 weeks after a heart transplant. And Scott already in getting up, and it took about 10 minutes to have him sit upright. There were just seemingly hundreds of things attached to his body. Yeah. That's what it looked like. But for him to stand up, which is also shown on the documentary, the will that he had, he wanted to go for a walk right then. And they said, no, we can go for a walk later. But I think, Dan, his rehabilitation and his quick recovery was based on his athleticism and what he went through in high school, at Kansas, and in the NBA. You know this. I'm having a difficult time putting it all together. But if you tell Scott he can't do something, he's going to do it. If you tell Scott, well, it's going to take a month, he'll do it in a week. And that's something that was so apparent that morning when I was in his room.
Absolutely. And he's told us many times that was his mentality. That's what he that's what he had to be the guy. And you've seen him on a basketball court a lot more than I have. But
Yep.
for someone to play in the league 11 years, they got to have something that the average person doesn't have. And Scott wasn't the biggest guy. He wasn't the strongest guy. Wasn't the most athletic, but he had it up here. And he knew what to do. And he knew his role. And, it's what Bobby Jackson told us. He said, Scott knew his role.
Yep.
He says, I'm going to be the toughest guy on the court. You're not going to outwork me. And,
Nope.
and Shaquille O'Neal may have had his way with him a couple of times, but I guarantee Shaquille didn't want to play against him. Guarantee he didn't enjoy doing it because Scott was a hard ass out there. And all of that shows up. All of that comes through. And just Scott's personality, just in the chair. He's such a good character, such a good interview.
Sure.
That, he really made our jobs so much easier than they otherwise could have been through all of that, but also just allowing us to be there. And again, I go back to, he understands TV. He understands how this stuff works. I think he knew that if we let these people here, it's going to be that much better for the story. And then the onus is on us as a company, as a team, to pay that back and be like, we have to work as hard for him as he's working for his family. He's earned that. He's definitely earned that. So that's what we tried to do. And we hope people like it on Sunday.
I think people will love it. Dan, it's been a pleasure to meet you. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. As I have told you before I started this interview, phenomenal job. This is an incredible documentary. And again, folks, have some tissue by your side. You're going to need it. You're going to need it. Dan, great job on this documentary. And hopefully our paths can cross again in the future. And thank you very much for coming on.
I would like that very much. We had a great team. I'm far from the only person that worked on this thing. Jeremy Schaap was the reporter. We had a great editor, great editorial team. And, it takes a village, and it certainly took one in this case. So thanks for having me on. Are you a father, Grant?
I am a father, yes.
Happy Father's Day to you. Happy Father's Day to all your listeners.
Thank you.
Everyone out there. Make some popcorn and enjoy yourselves at 1:00 on Sunday.
Same to you if you're a dad. And
cheers. Thank you.
Thank
you so much. I'm going to go put the little rugrat to bed now.
All the best.
Cheers. Care. Thank you all. God bless.
Good stuff from Dan Lindberg right here on If You Don't Like That. And I'm telling you, I had a chance to watch this documentary a couple of days ago, and it is absolutely amazing. And if Scott's watching, we had too many superlatives during that 25 minute chat. You're an idiot. No. I've known Scott for 25 years now. We're close to it. And I've always talked about Scott. He's as loyal as any friend that I have. And I judge my friends. One of the top criteria is on loyalty. And he's as loyal as they come. And if I'm ever in a foxhole, I know the first guy I want next to me. First of all, because of his size. But no, he's loyal as can be. I love the man. I love Dawn. And they're very, very special people in my lives. And I will just, again, tell you that being in that room with Scott and Dawn the morning after his heart transplant surgery, it's changed how I look at things a lot. I don't really complain that much anymore. And Scott would be laughing right now because he goes, "You don't Red, you're always complaining. Red," he calls me Red. "Red, you're not complaining." He'd be saying that. I would just tell you that, what do I have to complain about? I mean, there's really not much to complain about when you see what the donor's family has gone through and what they continue to go through and what Scott has gone through and so many others. So become an organ donor. Save someone's life. Change somebody's life. Become an organ donor. It's one of the great things you can do. It's a great gift that you can give someone when your time comes. It's a great gift. All right, we will make the transition into sports for a couple of moments. The winner at the U.S. Open so far is Oakmont. There's only a handful of golfers in the red, and they got out early, but when you see Scotty Scheffler and Rory McIlroy and Bryson DeChambeau and so many others, you know, struggling to become a 3 or 4 over par, it tells you a lot about the golf course. And generally, these golf courses only become more challenging as the weekend goes by. So phenomenal to watch the U.S. Open. NBA tomorrow, game 4, in which, speaking of the Pollards, they were at the game last night. I don't know if they're going tomorrow, but they had a great time. It was a phenomenal spectacle from an entertainment perspective with the crowd and everything else. Game 4 tomorrow. And I think it's a must win for the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think if the Thunder lose tomorrow, they will not win this series. So it's a must win for the Oklahoma City Thunder. It is a must win. And then, of course, a couple of days off before they go back to Oklahoma City. Want to let everyone know that we are brought to you in part by New Works Plumbing. They've got a fix for you, and they are available around the clock 24/7. Just go to sackserviceplumbing.com, call the number on your screen. New Works Plumbing, NEWWRX. That's right, NEWWRXplumbing.com. Available 3 in the morning, 3 in the afternoon, whenever you need them. They are awesome. Also brought to you in part by the folks at Sunrise Landing from Blazona Development, with many models to choose from. Don't forget that there's no Melrose, there's no homeowners at Sunrise Landing in Calusa. Good access. I-5, Highway 45, Highway 20, adjacent to the Calusa Golf and Country Club. That's where you'll find Sunrise Landing. Sunrise Landing in Calusa. Once again, go to calusasunrise.com and you can check everything out at Sunrise Landing. I'm happy to take phone calls if you want. I'm happy to continue on with the chat messages. Thank you very much for those of you that have reached out about this documentary, and check it out at your convenience. Obviously Sunday, and as Dan said, he gave you all the times. So good stuff. All right. Good stuff right there. Already received a message from the Pollards. Love you too. Yes, indeed. But back at you is what I'm going to say real quickly. They're great. They're the best. So again, we talk about like life experiences and the ups and downs. Ever since I met Scott, it wasn't long before he told me about his father and that no male figure had lived past their 50s in their family. And we actually talked about a heart transplant and the fact that that was going to be inevitable in all likelihood at some point in his life. This was 20 years ago we were having these conversations. And he was actually telling me that he probably won't be able to get a heart transplant from a human because he's too big. And it would the chances of finding a heart of that size would be near impossible. And that we were talking about pig hearts. You know, they've been doing a lot of research. As a matter of fact, to the best of my knowledge, there are parts of the pig's heart that they use today in humans for valves and things of that nature. And Scott was telling me, and I haven't done a lot of research on this, that it really won't be that far into the future, in all likelihood, where pig hearts are being used on a fairly regular basis, from what I understand, with medical technology and how it's improved. And so I've known for a long time that this was going to be probably inevitable for Scott, just in our friendship. And, you know, he used to go to a cardiologist in Boston all the time, and constant checkups on his heart and ups and downs. Oh, I'm good. Then a year later, oh, I'm not good. I'm having problems. And I'm just so happy for him that his body has accepted the heart and not rejected it. He's on constant medication I've talked to you about. And that constant medication can cause other issues, which it has. Kidneys being number one. Knock on wood, he's okay now. But for those of you that have been the recipient of a new organ, whether it be a kidney or what have you. I mean, it's an everyday process. It's not just like you get a new heart and I'm all good now. I can run down the street. No, 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 no. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it, and your body has to accept the heart, and it takes a long time. It's not just like you walk out of the hospital when Scott did, whenever that was, 2 weeks later, and you're good to go. No, 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 no. It's not like that. And I've learned that after going through this process with Scott and Dawn. This is content that we need from time to time. Thanks. And I would agree with you. I would agree with you. It is content that we need from time to time. And that's why I'm spending time on this. And I'm speaking on behalf of not only Scott and Dawn, but I'm speaking on behalf of so many others right now that are right where Scott was a year and 4 months ago. Lying in a hospital bed, not knowing whether they're going to get that call that could potentially save their life. There are many, many, many people right now, as we're watching this, waiting, just like Scott was waiting. Become an organ donor. That's now Scott's life mission. And that's something that he and his wife have committed themselves to with a foundation. They just had a phenomenal event around the Indianapolis 500, leading up to the Indianapolis 500, a big fundraiser. And that's going to be something that is their mission going forward. Organ donor awareness, because it really is so important. And you can make a big difference in an individual and a family's life by becoming an organ donor. So please do. Please do. But thank you for that message, because I think we all need content like this from time to time. Father's Day on Sunday, and this documentary is so much about father-son, not only Scott's father, but Scott being a dad himself. And for those of you that have been with me for a long time, the last time I had my dad on the radio was Father's Day of 2007. And I used to replay that interview every Friday before Father's Day. And even a long time, 10 years later, 13 years later, I still got amazing feedback from that interview that I had with my dad when I was doing the show with Mike Lamb on Father's Day weekend of 2007. And my dad passed on November 2nd of that year. I always tell the story that I was in San Antonio. I was walking back from the mall to the hotel on the Riverwalk. At about 4:00, I was getting ready to head back, take a shower, pack, get on the 5:15 bus to the arena, and do the game that night. And I got a call from my brother telling me that we had lost Dad. And as it turns out, they found my dad on the couch, and ESPN was on. And when we had the memorial for my dad a month later, I told the story of that day and receiving the phone call at 4:00, and that my dad had always told me, if anything happens to him, just go keep doing what you do. So I did the game that night, and I did the game the next night in Dallas. I didn't miss games. And that was my dad's wish. We were raised with a work ethic that you go to work, you get paid to do a job, you do the job. And so a month later, at the memorial in New York, I said, for those of you that know my dad very well, you know that he watched every one of my games. And if you did not know that, I'm the TV announcer for the Sacramento Kings, and my dad took great joy in watching all the games. And we would talk after every game. We talked after the game on Halloween night against New Orleans, October 31st, 2007, after the game in which the Kings lost. And it was the last phone conversation I ever had with my dad. But I said, they found my dad at 2:00 on the couch and ESPN was on. And in retrospect, I'm so grateful and happy that they found my dad in the afternoon and not after the game, because I would have had a lot of guilt associated with me, because my team that night that I worked for, the Sacramento Kings, only had 29 points at the half in that loss to San Antonio. And I would have felt that the Kings killed my father with their poor play if they had found my dad after the game. So I told that story, and obviously it got a laugh. But my dad watched every game. As soon as it became available on League Pass, my dad watched every game. It didn't matter what time it was on. And almost after every game, I got a call from my dad, and we would talk about the game. Not so much on the home games, because it was my dad would be asleep, but he would call me the next day. If it were in a different time zone and he was up, we would always talk after every game. And I miss those talks greatly. My dad was extremely knowledgeable about sport, was not afraid to give his advice on the team, just like you as fans would do, and why we have a show here. And it was something that was a great joy in me doing my job. And to this day, the greatest phone call that I've ever made in my entire life, as I get ready to turn 66 next week, is the phone call I made to my dad back in 1988, in the spring of 1988, when I was told that I would be the TV voice of the Kings. And I walked out of Elliot Strzynski's office at Channel 31 and went to the nearest phone and called my dad and shared with him the news. And we kind of both broke down. My dad broke down on the phone. And it was, to this day, the greatest phone call I've ever made in my life. I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it. So on that note, I just want to wish everyone a very happy Father's Day. I appreciate all of you so much. I really do. You have made the transition for me over the last 5 years an interesting one, a new chapter in my life, a new chapter in Scott Pollard's life, with a new heart. And I have found this platform, which I love, and it continues to grow. And I thank Ryan for his contributions and how far he's come in a short period of time. But what you do for us, that's why we keep coming on every day. You're freaking awesome. I also want to give a special shout out to another one of my sponsors, because whenever we need something, he's like, what can I do? And that's Brian. And Brian, I wish you a very happy Father's Day. Bennett's Restaurants, I hope you can get there for Father's Day. If not, shortly thereafter. Prime Seafood and Steaks. And Brian, thank you for your loyalty. I always talk about loyalty. I can say that about all my sponsors, and I mean that. Loyalty. Loyal. And I can't thank them enough. Bennett'sRestaurants.com. You're awesome. Thank you very much for your sponsorship. Thank you to Scott at New Works Plumbing. Happy Father's Day, Scott. Dennis, Blazona Development. Dennis Blazona. Dennis, happy Father's Day to you. Thank you very much for what you do for this channel and the sponsors that have been with me for 5 years off and on. Thank you very much. Hope everyone has a fabulous weekend. I will not be on tomorrow, so Ryan will be doing the post-game show solo, but look for me next week, and have yourself a great weekend. Enjoy the golf. Enjoy your weekend. If you're a dad, happy Father's Day. If you're not a dad, but you'll be sharing it with your dad, make it a great Father's Day for him. Appreciate all of you. Thank you very much. We'll talk to you soon. Bye bye now.